This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, Phil Murphy will serve as New Jersey's governor for another 4 years, but not without some major surprises on Election Day. Here to discuss what it all means for New Jersey's business community is NJBIA President and CEO, Michele Siekerka. Michele, thanks for being back.
Pleasure to be back, Bob.
All right, so Michele, this governor's race, complete surprise. Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican candidate, really made it a close contest when people were not expecting that. What do you take away from all of it?
Well, I take away that New Jersey has reasserted our position as a state that is right up the middle, which is who we always have been. We talk about that, right?
Right.
We're a very moderate state, which means purple.
Yeah.
And we've seen that historically here in the state of New Jersey. And it's actually, frankly, nice to see us reasserted right in the middle, which makes us even more relevant and significant on the national stage, once again, as a swing state.
Were you surprised by it? As the night was going on, and you probably went to bed and Jack Ciattarelli was probably winning at that point.
Yeah, a little after 2 a.m. Jack was still ahead, and it was interesting. A lot of texting going back and forth, people trying to figure out why the polls were so off. A lot of people frustrated by the polling, which we've seen before. Was I surprised? I have to tell you, I wasn't shocked. Just because of where we sit in the business community and what we hear each and every day, I was surprised that, though, the voice was actually heard at the election booth.
Well, I wanted to actually turn to that. When you think about 4 years of Phil Murphy as governor, we've had high taxes. The recovery from the pandemic has been slow. Do you think that played a part in the turnout even?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Groundswell from communities all across the state.
Right.
We're a home rule state. Which created a lot of challenges during COVID, mixed messages and different patterns of conduct during COVID, who could be open, who couldn't be open, what are the rules in my town, but across the street I could do this.
Right.
And then there's just so much, of course, taxes, all right? At the end of the day, everybody votes with their wallet.
Right.
And clearly, our budget is 33% higher than it was 4 years ago.
Right.
And people are not seeing tax relief in that, so that hits them in their wallets. And then during COVID, just the angst of things that have gone on over the last 20 months in the state of New Jersey and across the nation, people are pent up and they spoke out.
Yeah, I'll read you a quote from Governor Murphy the day after the election when he was actually declared the winner. It's quite clear that there's a lot of hurt out there, and there are a lot of kitchen tables that we need to connect with more deeply and help folks get through this period, whether they've lost a loved one, a job, a small business, or they're frustrated by the ongoing pandemic or economic recovery, whatever it may be. What do you take from that? Do you think, for lack of a better term, is it lessons learned? I don't know.
Well, I hope it's lessons learned. Mm-hmm. I hope it's recognition that we're not the far left-leaning progressive state that maybe has been reflective of some of the things we've seen over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. Again, we are a moderate, center-of-the-road state that needs to be heard. More people need a seat at the table, not just a seat at the table, though, Bob. If we speak, don't just listen, but respond, react, and engage, and bring us in. I've said this numerous times. With all due respect, does the front office acknowledge us? Absolutely. Yeah. We send a letter, thank you very much, it's received.
Right.
But we don't know what happens from there oftentimes. We need to be back at the table having interactive discussion about comprehensive solutions for the state of New Jersey, not tactical block and tackle.
Yep, all right. Also on Election Day, Senate President Steve Sweeney was defeated by basically a political unknown named Edward Durr. Senate President Sweeney held that post since 2010. So what do you think happened there?
Again, I think he was an unintended consequence of the red wave in the state of New Jersey that brought us back central. South Jersey really changed their tone, and he was the subject of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's a personal statement to the Senate president. I think it's more that he got caught up in the wave that changed in southern New Jersey.
Right. Do you think this will change the Senate's role with the legislature and how it works with the governor with his departure?
Yeah, I mean, with all fairness, Senator Sweeney really was the voice for business over the last 4 years. Yeah. He sat center stage on some very critical business issues. Remember, he was also part of the bipartisan, his bill along with Senator Oroho on the reform package.
The path to
progress, right? Yet, we asked many times over the last 4 years, where is that? You've got a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature and bipartisan reform package of bills. Where are we going with it?
Right.
And I feel sad that he's going to leave his post without having been able to advance more of that reform. Right. But we need to continue to take up that reform mantle.
Right. If you look back at the first 4 years of Governor Murphy's first term, I think there's a perception out there that maybe the legislature, the Democratic leadership in the legislature, oftentimes kind of deferred to the governor, didn't challenge anything. Do you think next 4 years, seeing what happened with this election, that they'll be so willing to fall on the sword for something that might not be as popular?
All yet to be seen. Mm-hmm. The political dynamics of the next just 2 months, let alone next 4 years, is all yet to be seen.
Right.
We have indications of who will rise as the Senate president, right? But what that leadership means, the dynamics yet again of the North, Central, South in the state. Who is the presumptive, future head of the Democratic and Republican Party? Is Jack going to stay in? I mean, let's be fair. Yeah. Jack asserted himself as the leader of the Republican Party in the state of New Jersey. Is he going to take up that mantle and an agenda for reform on that side of the aisle, even though he's not in an elected position? So these are all the dynamics that we have to watch. This isn't just this is not just because all the D's are in power right now. The power shift has shifted to the middle, which makes the Republicans, much more significant than they were for the last few years. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, and we haven't even discussed some of the assembly seats they picked up in the election as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think one more significant observation that needs to be made is the role of women in this last election. Yeah. Women stepped up. They stepped up significantly, and many of them were elected. Now, a lot of that was at the more local and regional levels, right? But in the assembly as well. And that is fantastic. And I think you're going to continue to see the women's middle of the road movement continue along. To that, I will honestly say I'm sad that we're not seeing more diversity in leadership of the legislature. Yeah. We are the most diverse state in the nation. Yeah. Business has been doing what they can with intent and purpose to bring more diversity to our boards and our C-suites, and almost are mandated and demanded to. And yet we're seeing zero diversity in our legislature for another at least 2 years. Right. I don't think that's the right message for the state of New Jersey.
And there's no doubt, Michele, that has been picked up by the media over the past week for sure. So maybe change will happen. Might not be this time, probably be the next time, I'd imagine.
We'll see.
I go back to the first gubernatorial debate. It feels like it was years ago now because Election Day was such a long day. The governor said at the first debate, he said that he would not raise any more taxes. What do you think? You think that's going to happen?
A few weeks after he said that, the first tax increase went into effect, which was the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund replenishment, right. Which could have seen some relief from the recovery money, and it didn't. Now, that tax is a 3-year tax. So we just had the first year of it at the end of October hit.
$252 million.
Yes. All told, it's just shy of $1 billion over 3 years for New Jersey business. So the New Jersey business community is going to have a tax increase for the next 2 years if we can't have further relief from the federal money.
You think in the next 4 years, we had NJBIA hosted an energy conference recently, and the discussion was about costs to fulfill some of the goals. Do you look at that as a possible tax, for lack of a better term, if it costs more to reach those energy goals?
So we have to fund things from somewhere, and we keep increasing our underlying budget to do it. Again, I'll repeat, 33% increase in 4 years in our general fund. Right, so that money has to come from somewhere. That doesn't mean That does not mean that we don't need to take those actions. Right. We need to take those actions in a fiscally responsible manner and ensure that how we look to fund those actions doesn't just disproportionately fall back on the business community yet once again.
Okay. Also, talk on the big topic of the time now. The governor's won his second term, but there's still talk of mandates for business in terms of having mandatory vaccines within the workplace. Where do you think this is going right now?
Again, yet to be known. I would really hope that we've already peaked on this issue and that we're done pushing more mandates.
Yeah.
You know, we've got the Biden mandate right now for employers with 100 employees or more,
right.
Which is before the circuit court and being
it's
argued.
definitely being challenged, right?
Being argued vigorously through many circuit courts right now.
Yeah.
We'll see how that lands. We have mandates here in the state of New Jersey that we're just in the beginning stages of seeing implemented.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, we stand by the position that New Jersey employers should have the opportunity to make this decision in and of themselves, taking into consideration their work environment, their workforce, and those that they serve through their products and services.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned mandates, and I wanted to bring in closing kind of the subject of New Jersey employer morale. Later this month, NJBIA is going to be coming out with its annual Business Outlook survey. And we asked business owners if the constant challenge of staffing, mandates, and restrictions from the pandemic had caused them to reevaluate how long they want to keep their business. And 37%, Michele, said there was no change in their plans, but 28% said yes, they will look to sell or cease their business sooner to the pandemic challenges, while 31% said they were still determining whether to change their plans due to the continuing pandemic challenges. So where do you think this is going? Do you think this is an indication at all that people are getting tired?
They're not getting tired. They are tired. They're totally burnt out. I hear it each and every day.
Yeah.
You know, we just hosted a group of shore businesses on a roundtable discussion of the future of tourism at the Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
They're exhausted.
Yeah.
They don't have a workforce, right? They're looking, they're like, is there a next generation behind me? And they don't, you know what, they're leaning into technology, but if you think about restaurants and such, they don't want to change their business model, right? Their business model is customer service.
And they're used to it.
Yeah. They'll do what they can do to sustain, but I'm not surprised when I saw that. It just saddened me. It breaks my heart each and every day when I talk to New Jersey businesses, especially Main Street all across the state of New Jersey, on how bad they're suffering right now.
Yeah, well, we shall see. Michele Siekerka, we thank you for your input, and we know you'll be in the thick of it all the way through.
We'll be there.
All right, and we'll be back right after these words.
Okay, at AT&T, everyone gets our best deals on all smartphones.
Let me break it down. You got your new customers.
They get our best deals.
You got your existing customers. They
Also get our best deals. Everyone gets the deals.
questions.
Got it. But why did you use a permanent marker?
Because I want to make sure you remember. I'm going to get a new whiteboard.
It's not complicated. Only AT&T gives everyone our best deals on every smartphone, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G for free.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first, that connects you to technology and each other, that's built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only officially authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, our next guest is known as New Jersey's preeminent chef, with establishments from Seabright to Saratoga Springs to Saudi Arabia. This year, he's opened 2 new, unique New Jersey restaurants with his signature flair. Here to discuss them and other things going on in his crazy busy world is Chef David Burke. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, great. So first of all, you just opened a new restaurant in Morristown called 1776.
Yeah.
What is it? Why should people go there?
Well, it's a beautiful space, and Morristown's a great city.
Yeah.
So we're right on the green or the square there on the opposite side of the hotter side, which is more retail. Mm-hmm. And we have a big space. It's called 1776 by David Burke and Top Golf Swing Suites. So there's a couple of reasons, many reasons to go. It's a beautiful space. Food is great.
Right.
The service is getting great. I mean, we're only a week old.
Sure.
And the bar scene is great, but there's also a sporting element in the back part of the restaurant, different room, same menu, where they have the simulators for golfing, football, or just to watch a game. So each suite sits about 12 people. 8 people can play a game at once. Dodgeball, fun. Kids, adults, well done, beautiful design, and the food is good. And it's a city that's surrounded by, either commuters going to New York, and then on the other side of town, you're getting into the Far Hills and the Chester and P-Pack farmland. So
it's a great area up there. And, you know, to think that you can have David Burke food and then take a couple of swings is pretty amazing.
I'm very impressed with what they did with the sporting element of it. I didn't, you know, again, I'm focused more on, I was focused on the restaurant, the food, and this and that. And then when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a great idea.
Right.
For adult fun, too. It's a very social restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, there's huge outdoor seating, which we missed this season, but by springtime with fire pits right on the square. So it's kind of European. You got cars going around the square. Yeah. The food is wonderful. It's a big space, great music. The bar room is big bar. And then there's a beautiful dining room, open kitchen, table in the kitchen, sushi bar in the corner of the dining room. And then you have the sporting element, which is not like a sports bar at all. It's high end. Yeah. It's just good fun, but social. So even if you're having a drink at the bar, you can walk back to the sporting area. Yeah. So it's a great place to flirt. Yeah. It's a great place to people watch.
Got that, folks?
And to socialize. And to eat.
Right, and to eat. And, you know, I've seen pictures. It's very chic. I did actually get to go to one of your newest restaurants you opened this year, Red Horse.
Yes.
In Rumson. Great experience, great food. The popovers. I know, listen, I know you do the high-end food, but these popovers, they're so addictive. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you have some history with this place, obviously. This was Fromagerie prior to being Red Horse.
Fromagerie was opened in 1972. I grew up in Hazlet, which was in 20 minutes from Rumson.
Right.
I worked there as a kid under Hubert Peter, who was the chef. I happened to be in a position to buy it in 2014. Right. And 2007 we bought it. In 2014, my partner and I split up. And we had to sell it, and became something else called the Rumson House. And we had owned it as Fromagerie, keeping the legendary name. But then this time I was fortunate enough to buy it back again, and it was time for a name change because it was it was time.
Yeah, and I had read somewhere that the name change came from a picture, correct?
It's fun. I bought a painting in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where my son was living.
Okay.
The day of the pandemic. Beautiful piece of artwork of a red horse.
Right.
And I had it at home. And when I bought it from the artist, he was a Vietnamese guy, right on the Lambertville Bridge there. If you're going into New Hope on the left, great little gallery. I don't know the name.
Right.
So I invited him to the opening. I said to him, I'm going to use this as a logo one day somewhere, not knowing it was going to be there.
Right.
But because Rumson's situated between two rivers and near the ocean, but it's also situated next to Colts Neck and Homedale. There's lots of horses out that way. So instead of, we have a restaurant called Drift House on the ocean, and a lot of the restaurants down there pay tribute to the ocean.
Sure.
So we wanted to pay tribute to the music and the horse country. So we have a couple of musical booths called the Rock and Roll Booth and some paintings. But the Red Horse was the anchor for the idea of the name and the decor. And I have an Italian restaurant, Drift House, that does pasta and Mediterranean. So we decided, because we're 2 miles away, to do beef and Asian. So we have a sushi bar upstairs, and the Red Horse plays into the Chinese, like you had the fried Chinese lobster.
Yes, it was delicious. Yeah.
And that tends to appeal to a lot of people to Asian flavors.
Yeah, although I think I got a mailer from it. It says, "What's your beef?"
That's interesting because like I said, I worked in Rumson in the late 70s. In the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was a famous restaurant there called What's Your Beef? They have since closed, and I took the domain name What's Your Beef. So we're having because we're a steakhouse, we're doing a steak dinner Wednesday, and we're going to start doing red meat dinners. It's called What's Your Beef? Tonight the beef is going to be F1 Wagyu. It's going to be Wednesday night actually.
Nice.
And we'll do it every couple of weeks. So you're going to get What's Your Beef had a salad bar. So we're going to give everyone a chopped salad and then 3 different cuts of Wagyu beef that we partnered with in a farm in Kentucky that feeds, they grow up on bluegrass and then they're finished on grain. But so we have whole quarters. You can't have a whole one in our walk-in. But we have the 4 quarters, a whole animal aging. And for us and the chefs that work for me, it's just great to be able to have that and experiment and cut. So that'll be this Wednesday, What's Your Beef?
Great. I love that. Horse. I love that tagline. I did want to ask you, I can't remember, 17 restaurants I think you have now, or you can correct me if I'm wrong. How do you know when it's ready to open? What's the process you have to go through before you're like, all right, let's go?
It's I guess it's like having a baby. You don't know when it's coming. What we do, they all open different. Sometimes we take an existing place and we renovated, and that's an easier opening because we know the electric works. We know there's no leak on the roof. We know when you open a new restaurant like 1776, it's a big production.
Yeah.
And you got to, so you softly open it. You do a couple of practice runs. Some soft openings last for 2 weeks, or training. Larger corporations will do that.
Yeah.
So we try to do a few days of training or a week.
Yeah.
We try to hire people that are really good with experience, and we're very successful with that. Usually, always in the back of the house, and the strength of the kitchen. And now that we have several restaurants in Jersey, we can promote from within. Right. But it's always training waiters. Yeah. It takes a little while. It's like like kindergarten. First couple of days in school, it's like this goes here, this goes here. So we're getting there, and happily, 1776 had a great first week. We were busy, but we had to hold it back so we can control the reservations until we're ready. Then we start to say, okay, we did 150, let's do 200 this week on a Saturday, and then until then you got to back down. And,
You ever have a soft opening that you're just like, we're going back, we're not opening for another month or two?
Well, you can't go back that hard. Mm-hmm. But there's times where you say, okay, we're gonna close down a day and do a little training. I've done that in the city, where sometimes you're over ambitious in your menu and your descriptions and the complexity of it. You have to simplify. So you learn, and when you're a younger chef, you want to show it off. So you want to put everything on the first day. You get a little older. It's like, okay, let's start with 8 items. We'll add 2 more next week, 2 more after that. So we're pretty good at it, but it's really it's tough to open a restaurant.
Yeah. I did want to mention that this is a pretty big award for you this year. I want to make sure I get it right. It was Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year for 2021. This is a big award. I'm curious, as I'm hearing you talk, you're talking about the 70s, you were in the restaurant industry. What's the thing you've learned most in, I guess, the 30 plus years or 30 or so years you've been a restaurant owner? What would the David Burke of today tell the David Burke 30 years ago?
I think that you just gotta cover all the aspects, and stay focused on what the theme is and what the outcome you're looking for. There's so many distractions, and you can't make everybody happy all the time. Even with the design, simple is better. I love the artwork element of the design. Food-wise, you have to have something for everybody, and you can always grow into stuff. Like I said, don't be over ambitious and try to gild the lily, as I learned from one of my old partners, because I had to ask him what that meant when I was young. And he's like, don't overdo everything. Simple is good. And a lot of people like to eat simple and clean, as opposed to, and I'm talking about in the 80s when the food was this high, and it was, and we could charge a lot of money. So we always thought we had to outdo each other as a competitive chef. So I think that, have a focused element on what the theme is, and make sure as best you can that you're appealing to 2 demographics, the younger eater and the older, so that you're not an old stuffy place and you're not too hip for somebody else. And when I see a 20-year-old, 25, 30-year-old eating in our restaurant, and then their parents are coming later, and that happens at Red Horse with the sushi upstairs, that means we're doing something right.
How about, here at NJBIA, we've been kind of one of the leading voices on the hiring challenges and getting input from our members about the challenges that they faced this year. For your restaurants, obviously you've opened a couple of restaurants, 3 in the last year now. Have those challenges impacted you over the past year? Yeah. Even David Burke?
Oh, yeah. Mainly New York more so than New Jersey, but New York has been very difficult. In fact, we're not even open. We're opening one called Mr. French in about 10 days. David Burke Tavern, which is our flagship, that'll open in January. The labor in New York's much more expensive for a waiter cook. What happened on the shore this summer, the demand was huge. But because of the extra bonus checks for unemployment, I had people tell me, listen, I'm making more sitting at home, or I'm making almost as much as a sous chef sitting at home, and I don't have. So that was challenging. We made it happen, but we had to limit hours sometimes, and you couldn't have a big menu. So there's certain things you had to do. Luckily we could borrow chefs and waiters from other parts, But what was happening on the beach is we're in the hospitality business. So usually if someone's taking a waiter or a cook, they pick up the phone and say, by the way, I got a resume. It was like dog eat dog.
Right.
Because the restaurants on the shore, the hotels and the resorts and the beach club, they have to feed people.
Yeah.
So they were offering $35 an hour for cooks so we lost a few. And so what happens is your payroll goes up. Your demand, you still can't feed that because you don't have enough waiters either.
Yeah.
And you take a hit. We were fortunate. We had outdoor seating, and we did well. But we had to pay. We didn't do as well as we could have. But I was happy that we're still up and going, getting out of the pandemic.
Right.
But it was competitive, and you didn't have the right person in the right place always. So you had to learn to say, it's not that important if the handle's this way or this way right now.
It is on this show.
I know, but you know what I mean? You had to say, okay. But in Red Horse, when we opened, we had a bunch of high school kids from Red Bank and Rumson, and they were our runners. A runner's a waiter who takes the food out of the kitchen, doesn't necessarily talk to the guests, brings it to the table. And I tell you, they did great.
Right.
Because they were part of the action of building something, and they see how hard we work, and we trust them with the food. And we needed to. So there was better communication, less yelling, and less of the Gordon Ramsay chaos type of thing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And more of the, okay, I'm going to tell you for the 7th time nicely.
Right.
And you know what? It works out.
Right. I wanted to bring up one other thing, David. You recently established a scholarship fund for culinary and hospitality students at Berkeley Community College.
Brookdale.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brookdale Community College. What's that about?
Okay, it relates to it relates to getting people to work for me too.
Yeah.
So we were
okay.
getting. There's a couple of things. I was talking to Berkeley about doing a culinary TV show,
Right.
where we took young students from Brookdale, worked for me for 6 months, and we gave them money to go work in New York. Right. The unfortunate thing is if you live in Jersey and want to work for the best chefs in the world in New York, you can't afford an apartment. Yeah. So you need to be able to raise money for them to move to New York, or to work for Emerald or Wolfgang Puck or whoever it might be part of the show. So we started talking about the show. Pandemic hit. Right. And then I said, you know what? We did it down in Charlotte with Johnson & Wales because our restaurant is up the street. Yeah. We took 6 apprenticeships, fellowships. So I went to David Stout at Brookdale, and we started talking. And I said, listen, let's do a scholarship. We were desperate for people. At one point, I said, listen, send me some people, and I'll pay their tuition. I'll still pay them to work for me, too.
Right.
But if they do a great job, I'll help them finish the next year. So that's how we started. So then we wind up doing 2 scholarships, one for a front of the house worker, which is a waiter manager, one for culinary. Right. So we have 2 of them going. And it's working out great. Yeah. So we got 2 students now, and we'll get 2 more. And the hope is that they come back and work for us. And if not, that's okay too. But they're learning properly, and they're excited.
It's experiential learning.
And they got to keep a certain grade point average there, and they have to give me 20 hours a week. Wow. And I pay them, whatever it is, a little above what the going rate is. Yeah. So the waiters obviously make good money. Yeah. And in the kitchen, it's a win-win.
Why is this important to you?
You
could do anything. You want this.
Well, I'm from that community. I think I like to give back, and I also like to teach, and plus I like to see people grow. Yeah. And I understand, I was talking about it on the way here too. If you're in the right place when you're young, like I was at Fromagerie and Avicenne, if you work in the right places, the path that goes forward, it can take you one way or the other. So it's important that they see the possibilities of what a really good restaurant is versus a mediocre one with bad habits. Yeah. And as I get older, I have a lot of knowledge and I want to teach. So eventually my next phase, maybe 10 years from now, is trying to put together a culinary school in Jersey that helps get people jobs in some of the best restaurants in America. Make a phone call and say, listen, you want to go to Texas? We call Dean Fearing. You want to go to Boston? Because we're all kind of connected. Yeah. And it gives people the opportunity to travel. And I think learning on the job is so much more important than going to a school. And I know there's that whole debate about is college worth it anymore? Yeah. College is worth it if you use what you went for. And cooking is so much more about hands-on and creativity. Yes, you need to know the history and the sanitation and nutrition. Sure. But, if you're a baseball player and you can hit and field. You don't have to go to college.
Yeah,
So
right.
being a chef is similar.
Yeah, they need to learn how to bunt too.
You need the skills. You need the skills. Yeah.
All right. Well, David Burke, this has been great. Great efforts on your part, both with the charity and also with what you're doing for business in New Jersey. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you all for joining us on NJBIA's Minding Your Business. We will see you next time.